it creates multiple copies of an object within a pattern. It's very useful for things like this, where you've got the same sized object equally spaced over a certain distance. You can also do this into different patterns. We'll touch on all of those. So first, before we do anything, let's draw a rectangle as the thing we're going to array. So either click the button, sorry, I should be using commands, REC for rectangle, and I just made sort of a square. Okay, so our command is AR. That opens up the array options. First thing it's going to ask is for us to select the thing we're going to array. You can select multiple objects as well, but we're just going to stick with one to start with. So I select objects, one found, I'm going to hit enter. We're going to do rectangular first. We'll talk about path and polar afterwards, but rectangular was the original one. That's sort of the first one you typically learn. So I'm just going to hit rectangular. I could have also typed R, enter. And this gives us a first glimpse at what we're talking about. So a new menu pops up at the top called Array Creation. And basically what this is doing is taking our original object and spacing based off of its center point, its geometric center point, a series of rows and columns. Rows being our up and down, and columns being our verticals. And as we can see up here, we're in rectangular type, 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, rows, 1, 2, 3. It's also giving an actual column spacing and a total. So the total is this distance from, so we're talking about our columns, from here, center point to center point. You could also consider it as outside edge to outside edge. Those should be the same. And same for the rows. So in between would be center point to the very next one. Total would be the whole distance. Now you can either type in here, which is very useful sometimes. Let's make this 3 feet. You saw how the whole thing shrunk down, right? It also adjusted our total to 9 for the columns because it's going to be our total distance. It'll be our total distance that we're working with because we've got, you're now thinking about spaces. 1, 2, 3. 3 feet times 3, we got 9. I got to adjust our rows as well. Let's do 24 inches for those. Ooh, now it starts to get a little tight. They're overlapping, but that's still okay. We just adjust this, let's say 30 inches. So you can do it within the prompts. You can also just grab these grips and adjust as you want. What this is doing, since we've set the in-between, it's actually adding new columns. So the outside one will add more based off of your settings, where the grips that are closer to your origin point, that's going to change your spacing distance, right? So you've got 2 sets of controls. One is your spacing. Those are the arrow grips that are nearest your origin point. That's your in-between, right? And then you've got these outside ones that will take those numbers that you've set as your spacing and add and remove rows and columns as you adjust. So if you've got once you're set on everything, you need to hit enter. That essentially ends your adjustments. Although you can always select this and adjust as you want. This prompt will always come back up as long as you select it. So within here, we can go back in, make these changes. Let's add a couple more rows and columns just so we can see what we're doing. Other items in here to look at as base point, that would be adjusting where this point is. By default, it's going from the geometric center, and I usually leave it at the geometric center, but that will determine how your spacing is understood. Edit source, if I click this, it's going to say, okay, select an item. I usually end up selecting the original one. Hit OK, and then I can actually change one, and it changes all of them. So you can see my array all change when I move this, which is kind of neat. You always got to hit Save Changes. So now my spacing and everything is the same, it's just my object is different. Similar idea, you can replace an item for your origin. You can also explode the whole thing if you want. If you have this selected, we'll get to explode a little bit later, but if you type explode, all of these are separate now. They're still polylines, but they're all kind of separate. So I'm going to undo the explode. Let's actually delete this. And let's look at what else we've got in our options here. So AR for array, select the object, enter, back to rectangular. So you can determine a lot of these same buttons that are up here are commands within your command line. So you can change number of rows, number of columns, your spacing, your overall count. So all the changes you can make up here, you can also make down here if you prefer.